A shoot has been growing for you in soil no one was permitted to inspect, and the ground is about to give. Not the version of the answer you would have ordered. Not the timing your nerves kept demanding. Not the polished arrival the louder voices have been training you to expect. A real one. The kind that has been forming under the seedbed in a darkness no human eye could measure. Lean closer to me right now. By the time these few minutes close, I'm going to walk you to the patch of ground where a small green blade of yours is preparing to break the soil. And I am going to set into your open hand one line I once spoke to a tired prophet writing from a jail cell, while the city outside his window was being torn apart. A line meant to silence. In this very hour, the small private fear you have been carrying that your particular harvest must have rotted somewhere down there in the dark. What is breaking through is what I started long before you noticed. I see you. The waiting in you has been longer than the waiting in most rooms you walk through. The body has been doing far more carrying than your face has shown. A mother kneels by a child's bed praying for a healing that has refused to read on any chart. A grown son in a parked car at the curb of his own driveway says, under his breath, the same request he prayed last Tuesday and last Easter and last winter. A young woman opens her bank app, closes it, opens it again, hoping the number will have shifted in the 7 seconds between glances. A widower waits on a phone call from a daughter who has not dialed in 11 months. One of you reading these words has been negotiating with a diagnosis for so many seasons that even the negotiation has gotten tired of itself. None of those quiet vigils is hidden from me. Each one is held in a soil deeper than the patience that has worn out at the surface. A neighbor stopped asking about the prayer because the prayer kept being the same one. Your sunrise conversation with me has gone shorter, not because the love has dropped, but because the same patient ask, day after day, started to seem like calling into a sky that absorbed the words and gave back nothing audible. Each shortened ask reached my ear in its full size. Each pause inside the asking was numbered. None of the silences you have been keeping have been silences on my side. They have been weeks. The seed was deepening its roots in soil you could not inspect. A tenderness rises in me about the long underground of your prayer, not impatience. The opposite. The very fact that you have kept watering a ground that has not yet shown a shoot is proof of an interior planter that has been collaborating with me longer than your senses have given credit for. Many around you have given up on patches far less compacted than yours. You have not. The not giving up is itself a quiet language. The not giving up has been the slow drilling of a root through a layer that needed exactly the kind of persistence you have offered. Breathe with me now. Just one round. Let the breath flow into the nose without effort. Then push the air out through softly parted lips, longer than it took to come in. Just once. Now another, now a third, an outflow even slower than the second. The longer exhale has its own quality of release. An inhale is reaching. A longer exhale is the body finally agreeing that the asking has been heard. Most of you have been performing only the inhale of your prayer. Gripping, asking, gripping again. And the forgotten exhale has been waiting to teach the rest of you that the seed has heard you, and that what is coming is doing what answers do in the dark. Let the next outflow run a little longer than the inflow before it. That stretched exhale is itself a prayer of trust, and a father reads it as clearly as the loudest formal one. There is a deeper layer beneath the long waiting than the obvious portion. A quiet shame has been riding alongside it, embarrassment about how often the same ask shows up, embarrassment about how worn the prayer has gotten in your own ear, embarrassment about needing the breakthrough as much as you do. in a culture that has trained believers to look like they need nothing visibly at all. A small, unspoken suspicion has been growing in the corner of your interior, that those whose prayers seem to surface faster must hold a kind of secret faith you were never issued. None of those subterranean weights showed up on any list of things you were warned to watch for. Each one settled into you in a different season. Each one has been weighed at my side with the rest. Not one is too small to set down where you sit now. Cup one hand softly over the back of the other and rest both palms on top of one knee. Light touch. The pressure of two cupped hands meeting is older than any teacher in your life ever explained. Hands stacked that way are the gesture a grandmother makes when she sits across from a grandchild whose worry she does not yet know how to address. Hands stacked that way say, I am here and I am holding what is in front of me. Let the touch stay one more breath. A pulse moves under the lower hand. That pulse has been beating the entire stretch your patience has been worn. Quietly, faithfully, without consulting any of your reasons. A maker still keeping that pulse going in your wrist is a maker still tending the ground under the patch you have been asking about for years. You did not assemble this fear of a rotted seed alone. The fear was handed to you, piece by piece, across years, no calendar logged. One afternoon, a Sunday school teacher informed your young self that prompt answers are the marker of strong faith, and that drag in the timeline says something unflattering about the asker. A season later, a parent muttered, "If you really believed, what you asked for would already be sitting on your table." And a small version of you wandered into the next decade, quietly auditing whether the believing was the kind that produced visible fruit. A year after that, an older friend assured you that breakthroughs land on the very morning of their arrival and never an hour earlier. And your nervous system began scanning each daybreak for a trumpet that was never built to sound that way. Then one night, a louder voice on a screen sold an immediate manifesting, and you walked off half hoping and half suspecting, and the suspicion eventually overtook the hope, and the hope grew small in a chest that was built for something larger. None of the chisel marks pressed into the place where breakthrough was supposed to live freely came out of my workshop. Yet the marks have been visible to me. The aches around them have been familiar to me. I have been the kind of father who lowers himself to ground level beside a worn patch of soil, not the kind who notes its barrenness from the road and walks on. Allow me to position myself between you and several voices that have been talking about me without authorization. One voice insisted that a true answer falls within some acceptable response window. A second voice claimed that the slowness of an outcome reads off the size of the asker's faith. A third muttered that drawn-out waiting is a coded refusal. Not one of those voices was mine. Not one of them ever was. A word from my direction does not embarrass the long waiter. A word from my direction lifts him. An asker who has remained at the same prayer through many seasons has done far more honest praying than a loud orator who swapped his prayers every Sunday morning. The length of any wait did not shrink the asking. The length of the wait deepened it. A picture of breakthrough sitting in your chest right now, instant, public, photographable, with a date stamp matching the date of the original asking, was drawn by hands that had no permission from me. Some of those hands belonged to teachers who meant well and were forwarding the only sketch they ever received. Others were held on purpose because a believer convinced that slow yields are a verdict is a believer easier to keep paying louder voices for the secret of speed. Whichever the origin, the falsified portrait got pushed in front of you, and the portrait has been disqualifying you from soil that has been busy for years. Lay the portrait face down on the grass for a few minutes. Let it lean against a tree behind you while I describe what a real breakthrough looks like inside the country, where I am the one running the seasons. A surfacing in my workshop is not a sudden production. It is a long underground process, finally reaching the air on its hour. The hour is not what the asker decided. The hour is what the soil has been preparing the asker to receive. A yield arriving before its hour would break the one receiving it. A yield arriving on its hour fits the one receiving it, because the receiver has been being shaped in the underground into the size required to hold what is coming. Any field of mine yields what was first put into it, not at the rate the planter prefers, at the depth the planter must have. Several of my slowest answers needed an entire generation to push above the soil. One faithful matriarch in the old pages held the same request for an heir across 25 long years. She finally rocked the child in arms that had grown white at the wrists, and the child she rocked grew up to seed a whole people. Her delayed shoot was the correct shoot. An earlier one would not have grown into a people. An earlier one would have grown into a smaller sun inside a smaller story. The weight was not penalty. The weight was the chamber where the size of the harvest was being measured to match the size of the recipient. You have been measuring whether the harvest is real by the height of the stalks above ground. Wrong instrument. Stalks above ground are the final visible chapter of a process that has been writing itself for chapters under the soil. A patch that looks barren is rarely barren. A patch that looks barren is a patch where the root system is multiplying, where the soil chemistry is being prepared, where the next yield is being made fuller than the asker first dared to ask. Delay is, in many of my fields, the multiplication chapter. Pause is the room where I am increasing the size of the answer to fit a story bigger than the one the asker first told. Receive this directly into the corner of you that has been bracing for the field to deliver a verdict of empty. The verdict is not empty. The verdict has never been empty. What you have been calling the absence of a breakthrough is the slow surfacing of one whose timetable was set in a chamber whose calendar your eye has not seen. Listen now. There is a sentence I want to put into your hand. It was first put into the hand of a tired man, writing in a country falling apart around him. Hear it, the way it first arrived. Not as a polished line on any modern slide, but as ink on a scroll. Scratched out by a man in a cell while the city outside his window was being broken. Stone by stone. Jeremiah was the man's name. He had spent 4 decades warning his people about a storm whose arrival had now reached his front door. By the time he received the sentence I am about to read with you, the armies of Babylon had already breached the gates. Walls of his city were falling. Many of his neighbors had been carried off in iron and rope. Hold there for a breath. I want you to see the picture clearly, because the picture is doing some of the work this sentence requires. Picture a man in his 50s sitting on cold stone with a single high window letting in a stripe of late afternoon. That is the room I came into. Not a temple, not a clean morning, not a polished hall with attendants. Such a setting is my usual address when I deliver a great hidden thing. I prefer the kind of room nobody would have chosen. The prophet himself was bent in a corner of that room. His hands were too sore to write quickly. His eyes were too tired to see his own page well. Outside, a city was finishing its long collapse. Inside, ink. A single small ration of ink in a small clay pot. Nothing else of any value. And one tired hand. I told him to call out anyway. To ask for things he could not see. To trust that I was already at work in soil he would never live to walk on. This is what I said to him. Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 3. Call to me, and I will answer you, and will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known. Walk through it slowly alongside me. There is more living inside this short sentence than any quick first pass will let you see. Call to me. Look at the first 3 words. Call, not strategize, not solve, not engineer. Call. The verb of a small voice across a distance reaching toward a larger listener. A man in a cell could not strategize his way out of the falling city. He could not solve the politics that had brought Babylon to his gate. He could not engineer the freedom of those already taken. He could only call. So can you. Whatever is being demolished outside the window of the room where you are reading, calling remains a verb your tired voice still has. The strategy is not the prayer. The solving is not the prayer. The engineering is not the prayer. The calling is the prayer, and I will answer you. Read those 4 words next. The answer is not in doubt. It is not call to me and I might answer. It is not call to me and an emissary will get back to you eventually. It is I will answer you. First person, direct. The answerer himself has guaranteed the response. The response is not a consolation prize from a bigger plan that does not include the asker. The response is the personal voice of the one being called, addressed to the one calling. You are not shouting into a public hall where your voice has to compete with louder voices for an official's attention. You are calling into the room of your own Father, where the silence after the call is not absence. The silence is the breath he is drawing before answering, and will tell you great and hidden things. Hear those words now. Great. Hidden. Things you have not known. Not the small answers your patience has been negotiating itself down to. Not the modest version of the yield you have been training yourself to accept, because the full one started feeling unrealistic. Great. The Father is not delivering a smaller version because the asker has waited long. The Father is preparing a greater version, and the long waiting was the room in which the greater version could be assembled. Hidden things means things that have been underground. The work has been hidden, not absent. The hidden is precisely what is preparing to push up, that you have not known. Look at the final phrase. The yield arriving is not a yield the asker had already imagined and was waiting to confirm. It is a harvest the asker has not been able to picture, because the asker has been picturing with the imagination of a smaller season. Most of you have been asking me for the version of the answer that fits the season you are sitting in. I have been preparing an answer that fits the season you are about to step into. The breakthrough is not going to look like what you were rehearsing. It is going to look like what you have not known. My thoughts are not the thoughts of the asker, and my ways have always been wider than the ways an asker has been able to lay out on a notepad in advance. Notice what I am doing in this passage. The sentence is not addressed to a clean afternoon. The sentence is addressed to a tired man in a small cell while a great hidden thing is already in motion outside his window. The breaking of the city is the soil. The displaced exiles are the seed. A wide, slow harvest from that seed will reach generations the prophet will not live to see. A small remnant of the same broken people will return decades later and rebuild a city. And from that rebuilt city, in a still later century, a carpenter from a small town up the road will arrive in the line no falling city is permitted to extinguish. All of those great hidden things are being arranged in the silence above the prophet's cell, while the prophet himself, with sore hands and tired eyes, is being told to keep calling. The same is happening above your room right now. Look back now at the line I said at the opening of these words. I told you a shoot has been growing in soil no one was permitted to inspect, and the ground is preparing to give. Here is the reason. Because the calling you have done across these many seasons did exactly what I asked of the prophet in that cell. The calling reached the answerer. The answerer has been at work in the underground. All the long stretch you assumed nothing was happening. What you have been calling the absence of a yield is the formation of one larger than the version you had originally requested. The shoot is preparing to push up. The blade is about to break the soil. The first green sign is coming up in a patch you had begun grieving as dead. When it appears, it will be the kind that you have not known. Because the version you have not known is the version a father has been keeping for you the whole stretch. If anything in these words is settling into the soil under your ribs, mark this with one word here below: sprout. Just that. Not a slogan. A small flag pressed into the edge of a field whose long underground work has not been wasted. Above this video, inside the pinned spot, 7 brief letters wait for you. One for each daybreak of the coming week. Slipped into your inbox the moment a soft yes lifts the gate. Receive them. Close your eyes for one slow breath, long enough for the small inside lid to remind the body that not every report needs the eyes open. Much of what I do in a tired interior happens while the eyes have been allowed to lower for a moment. Whole pieces of fear walk out through the closed lids that could never have walked out while the lids were busy reading the room. Lift them again when you're ready. The work was not paused by the closing. The work moved a little faster. Carry this small movement into the next few sunrises. The next time some patch of you begins announcing dead, and the announcement will come, because long underground work always tests the announcer first. Sit still wherever you are and quietly try this. Replace the demand, "Where is my answer?" with one simpler ask: what is moving in the dark? That swap is the whole exercise. Demand puts the soil on trial. The simpler ask sits down on the rim of the patch and lets the soil keep doing what soil does. Demand interrupts germination. The simpler ask leaves room for it. If a moment more is available to you, do not move past the ask. Settle inside it. Many people sprint by the comfort of that swap, because comfort feels like a country they have not lived in for a long stretch. Stay in the country a few breaths longer. Permit the shoulders to register that something underground may be much closer to the air than the eyes have been able to confirm. Permit the chest to soften around the possibility that the asking has been heard the whole time. Each breath spent inside the new question retrains a body that had been bracing for a verdict it was never going to receive. A third movement softens the others. When small, unexplained kindnesses appear inside a single week, a returned call out of nowhere, a knot that loosened without effort, an hour of quiet that arrived where noise had been forecast. Refuse to chalk the moment up to chance. Murmur, with whatever voice the surroundings will tolerate, the first blade. Such a phrase is a whole posture. Eye and ear are trained by it to register early arrivals of a thing they were waiting on, instead of dismissing those arrivals as fragments unworthy of recognition. Most yields under my care begin as pieces. Pieces are the previews. Pieces deserve the gratitude. First effort will likely make no impression. 10th effort may still seem to land in cotton. Soil that has been ignored a long season does not start crackling under the heel inside one quick walk across it. By somewhere near the 30th effort, however, an internal hinge begins to swing. Restless concern about timing drops by a few decibels. By somewhere near the 50th, you catch yourself moving through a whole afternoon without consulting an inner countdown clock. By somewhere near the 100th, you turn around inside your own week and grasp that the measuring stopped being the way you walk the field, and the field itself, without permission, without trumpet, has already begun yielding. A parallel softening will unfold alongside the exercise. Your prayer will start sounding less like a petition and more like a presence kept. Less like a request placed at a counter and more like a steady company walking the rows with the owner. Ask the question and put the kettle on. Ask the question and pull the car into the driveway. Ask the question and let sleep arrive without staying up to see whether the answer beat the dawn. The walking itself is trust. The walking itself is faith. Because the walking says, I called. The answerer is at work. I am no longer required to dig the kernel up to verify. A focused word now to whoever has been asking, across many seasons, for a healing in a body that keeps refusing the schedule you laid out for it. Listen. A body running slower than your hope does not function as a ruling against the asking. Bodies hold their own clocks, and the slowest stretch any body negotiates is hardly ever the closing stretch. What is being formed in the inner chambers across the slow chapter is part of the work no instrument has been able to read. Healing in a body is one outcome. A new tenderness inside the soul that walked the slow chapter with the body is a second outcome. Both outcomes are in the workshop. Bring the calling back again. Lay it down with no force. The answerer is mid-answer. Speak gently with me now. To whoever has prayed for years over a relationship that will not soften. Hardened relationships do not split the way frozen ponds split. They release the way mountain ice releases, silently, layer upon layer, with the shift happening underneath long before the upper surface admits any shift at all. Your long asking has been a slow warming the other party has not yet had words for. There will arrive a daybreak that no diary can mark in advance, when something inside that person bends in a direction the day before would not have bent. Keep up the calling. The release is already in motion. Speak with me now to whoever has been asking for a financial provision. The bank app keeps refusing to confirm. A balance is one room. A breakthrough is another room. The provision I'm preparing for you may arrive on a route the bank has no category to recognize. An unexpected door, an overlooked skill that suddenly fits a new opening. A relationship long forgotten that reaches back at the right hour. A small business idea you dismissed 3 seasons back that returns wearing a different coat. Stop limiting. My route to roots your spreadsheet can imagine. The answerer has channels your spreadsheet has never been allowed to read. A particular word also for whoever among you has prayed across decades over a child or grandchild who walked far from me. A returning is a slower work than most. A returning is rarely one dramatic morning. A returning is a series of small inner turns, each one invisible from where the parent stands, accumulating into a direction the parent will only confirm at the very end. Your asking has been delivered. Each one. Every single time. None of the prayers have rotted. They have been held by me, watered by me, applied to the inner soil of the one you love. At hours no parent is allowed to see. The shoot is coming. The shoot is coming. Keep calling. Pause beside me a moment if expectation has fallen away because the previous yield arrived and disappointed. A single underwhelming harvest is not the closing of an orchard. From time to time I allow a row to come up thin because the soil needed clearing for something fuller that could not have been planted while the lesser thing was occupying the space. The earlier yield that did not satisfy was not a refusal to feed you. It was a father clearing the row so the next feeding could be richer. Bring the asking back into the field. Soil has not been cursed. Soil is in rotation. What rises next will fit the version of you formed during the lean chapter. None of that chapter was waste. I do not waste chapters. And whoever among you is in a quieter stretch right now, a kinder season, a softer chapter, hear this final word too. Quiet seasons carry their own subtle danger. An asker who has stopped calling because the surface looks settled is an asker whose answer is being delayed by lack of asking, not by lack of answering. A father loves the calling even when the calling has no emergency attached to it. The calling itself is the relationship. Call across the soft seasons too. Underground work continues in every season. Keep your voice in the field. The shoot keeps preparing. Take the line once more, like a parting word offered from someone you trust as they head back into the dark of an evening. What is breaking through is what I started long before you noticed. Tuck that into the lining of any ordinary stretch ahead. Mouth it at a red light when the same long ask drops weight on your chest again. Press it under the collarbone where small private prayers exit a body unobserved. The shoot was begun by me. The deepening kept going because of me. The surfacing is being scheduled by me. No piece of this whole arc has rested on you alone. Each piece has been a partnership the whole stretch. When the first blade finally pushes through the surface, prepare yourself for how unremarkable it tends to appear. Most arrivals from my workshop walk in without ceremony. Perhaps a morning where the opening thought is a soft thank you in a slot that used to be occupied by a soft dread. Perhaps an afternoon where an unexpected steadiness drops into a room you assumed would be noisy. Perhaps a bedtime where sleep arrives without you running the asking through one more audit. Such small openings are not consolation, they are confirmation. They are the green sign of a thing you had quietly buried. Pause where the sign appears. Murmur a thank you into the air around it, even if the room holds no one to hear that thank you. A father catches it. A father has been listening for that single quiet murmur across every mile of the patient stretch. Amen. When this message has reached a tired patch that needed reaching, look just under this video. 7 short letters wait inside the pinned slot, 1 per sunrise across the next 7 mornings. Slip to your inbox the instant a soft yes opens the latch. Take them. Pass this along to anyone whose own field has been wearing them thin while they wait for a single green sign. Tap subscribe so the next word reaches you before the next round of doubt about the underground reaches you first. A long, quiet field was never meant to be walked from the rim by a planter standing on it solo.